Great that you're all here now after lunch. I was a bit not entirely sure whether we'd see many people at all Friday afternoon, so I'm really grateful that you've come to be part of this session. We've heard a lot of people talking about various products and about projects and about new pedagogies and new approaches to teaching. What I want to do rather with you this afternoon is look at sharing an idea, sharing a concept and maybe an opportunity, rather than looking at anything particularly from a pedagogical perspective. I'm going to be relating it to a project that we're working on, but it's purely for contextual purposes. My presentation, when I put it together, came to about 14 minutes. So there's no chance of going over time, but what I'd like to do is to take then the opportunity afterwards to engage in a discussion with you, to try and share some ideas, and to see how we can go further with the concept that I'm trying to put across to you. And what I want to kind of answer here is the question of really how can we explain why there are so many language learning materials available to pretty much everyone in the developed world, yet that so many of us still struggle to communicate with one another. We could also ask, or could also try to explain why those who are able to communicate with foreign business partners or with cross-border customer bases, why are they able to do so much better than the vast majority? So in short, how can we explain inequality, inequality in communication competencies, and what can we do to address this inequality? In this case, I'm not talking about English. English is the taken for granted lingua franca, if you will, of the commercial and of the academic worlds. But what happens when you're faced with someone from one of the so-called, or who speaks one of the so-called less widely used and taught languages, the LWUTLs, Czech, Polish, Lithuanian, Latvian, Bulgarian, Romanian, to name but a few. Or worse, take the situation, what happens when people from these countries are trying to communicate with each other. This is particularly significant if you look at the growth potential of small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, in these regions. I mean, large multinational corporations, they can select from any number of language learning resources for their staff to initiate, to facilitate entry into foreign markets. But if you take a small to medium-sized enterprise in Lithuania, say, there in blue, maybe this SME in Lithuania has successfully captured the domestic market. They provide jobs, they contribute well to regional development, their products and services are good, they're well in demand. Their staff probably speak reasonable English. Of course, English is now taught in schools in Lithuania. Maybe 20 years ago that wasn't so much the case, much more focused on Russian. English is now being a language of instruction. But they don't really have an international market. It's a small, medium-sized enterprise. There's no real need to do English on a day-to-day basis. So what happens when they hit their borders? They don't understand their Latvian neighbors to the north. They don't understand their Polish neighbors to the south. They don't have sufficient capacity to expand their operations beyond their domestic borders. This means that their regional growth is limited. It means that their potential for internationalization is extremely limited. What's more, even their choice of domestic location is perhaps limited to somewhere in the middle, to somewhere fairly central where they can be sure of an adequate access to a client base with whom they can actually communicate. I mean, perhaps, I don't know Lithuania socio-geographically, geopolitically, but perhaps economic conditions in the north or in the south are better. Better labour market conditions, cheaper land, greater turnover, higher profit, faster growth. but perhaps only half the potential customers. Communication competence, or a lack thereof, presents a significant barrier to entry, to market entry, for speakers of less widely used and taught languages. So, why don't these SOEs in Lithuania, why don't they provide their staff with necessary language training? Well, language training is expensive. People have job commitments, family commitments, and perhaps a lack of interest in pursuing traditional learning opportunities. What people want, according to our research, is to be able to choose where and when they can learn. They want learning opportunities to be interesting and relevant. They want instructions in their own language, so they can understand what's going on. And of course, they want all of this to be free of charge. That's a pretty tall order. Where are we going to find free language learning materials that are flexible, accessible, and of a high enough quality to engage people's interest? Let's look at some of the most sought-after language learning materials in the world. The Paul Pimsleur series, maybe you're familiar with it. Rosetta Stone, Linguaphone, I'm sure most of you will have heard of at least one of these. What do they offer? Well, they offer core vocabulary exposure, graduated interval recall, organic learning, proprietary computer-assisted language learning. What sets these apart from the free listening and gap-fill exercises that any one of us can access for free? learnalanguage.com, learnpolish.pl, or that really popular one, mylanguages.org/learn_Latvian. They do the same thing, but I bet you've probably never heard of them. They benefit us in the same way, but many of them won't last longer than their domain expiry dates. They offer the same activities, but there's nothing about them that we can really identify with. The Paul Pimsleur brand Rosetta Stone Linguaphone, they're all commercial products. They employ staff in dedicated marketing departments. They have advertising budgets. They can disseminate not just the name of the product, but the image, the idea, the belief that in using this product, we will enhance the way we feel about ourselves. This is how marketing is done. Good marketing doesn't sell a product. It sells a belief in a product. It plays on our self-perceptions and our egos. It makes us believe that we want it, that it complements our lifestyle, and that it'll help us to achieve our goals. Now, these commercial corporate training packages attract the large multinational organizations, corporations, public services, and others who have the capacity to invest in an idea. But what about the Lithuanian SMEs and those in surrounding countries? What kind of free language learning resource is going to allow people to learn these less widely used and taught languages with other less widely used and taught languages as the language of instruction? I mean, who is interested in developing materials for learning Latvian or Polish with instructions in Lithuanian, or with simultaneously learning Lithuanian with instructions in Polish, or learning Czech with instructions in Bulgarian? What is more, what is the interest in maintaining such a product? What is the interest in marketing the product to a wider target group? Who are the stakeholders? Who are the beneficiaries? And who cares? How can such a product be made appealing in the long term? How can we sell this product as an idea and as a lifestyle? So to answer my question at the beginning, there are plenty of language learning materials available, but the reason why so many of us struggle to communicate with one another is that quality language learning materials are simply not accessible, and those that are accessible are not sustainable. Access denied. Global Village, a language school in Poland, they had a vision for promoting Polish and other less widely used and taught languages in the region. This vision has attracted European funding in the form of a multilateral project grant under the European Lifelong Learning Programme. I represent the organisation Liberata, one of the largest private training and further education organisations in Austria, And with our experienced team of European project managers and training developers, Global Village approached us to coordinate their project. And together with partner organizations from Germany, Latvia, Lithuania, and the Czech Republic, we're starting to put this vision into practice. The Project Everyplace is looking at how to make high quality, relevant materials that can be accessed in less widely used and taught languages in order to learn less widely used and taught languages. The Project Everyplace is looking to develop materials that are interesting, relevant, and which appeal to the imagination of the user. What is more, the Project Everyplace is looking to offer these materials for free, and it's not only targeted to employees of small and medium-sized enterprises, but can be adapted to the needs of students and exchange programs, or to any number of potential target groups. However, the innovative aspect is not in the multilingualism of the learning resource, nor is it really in the universal accessibility or flexibility of the product, but that in intrinsically and contextually linking the learning of less widely used and taught languages to the authentic communication settings of small, less widely visited towns, this accessible and contextually driven language learning resource becomes a self-sustainable, self-disseminating carrier. It showcases small and medium-sized European towns, and in an age of growing investment in the marketing of places, is itself showcased by the towns. So we're not only really defining the way people learn, or redefining the way people learn, but we're redefining the stakeholders in language learning. Let me elaborate a little bit more. The Project Everyplace, a European Everyplace. Everyplace is a term coined in the current project. A European Everyplace is just a normal, unspectacular, but a unique place in provincial Europe. It's not a major tourist attraction, it's not a large city or a place that anyone would really ever have heard of. It's a shy place, a hidden place, but a place a place with a story. It's a place that nobody would think of visiting, but a place that, once stumbled upon by the unsuspecting outsider, leaves a lasting impression for its unique history, for its interesting local legends, for the modest beauty of its architecture. If somebody wants to learn a language, what better place to do it than in a European Everyplace? Now, the Project Everyplace brings the European Everyplace to the user with contextually rich dialogues and relevant learning objects, with rich high-definition videos and photographs of various places of interest within provincial Europe, within our European Everyplaces. The user can navigate their way through provincial Europe and develop their language skills within the authentic contextual framework of life in these countries. What is more, however, is that local governments, civic offices and stakeholders in local leisure and tourism have an inherent interest in promoting their towns and are more than happy to support language learning resources which encourage regional and international awareness and recognition of these towns. The Project Everyplace has secured agreement with local town councils and tourist agencies to actively promote and disseminate the learning platform through their own marketing material in return for having their towns included on our map of European Everyplaces. This is the kind of way that we're involving stakeholders from local authorities and the tourism sector. I have to tell you that I have no idea what she's saying, but it's in Polish and it's describing the place that we're looking at here. From what I understand from our Polish partners, Katia here, our friendly tour guide, is telling us an interesting story about this castle. Subtitles will be developed. Subtitles will be developed here on the bottom, so that learners can read these stories in their own language, i.e. they can listen to the story about the castle in Polish, and they can read about it in Lithuanian, in Czech, in Latvian, in whatever other language we end up working with. The story in itself is not the learning object. For one, it's far too complex for beginners. However, it sets the scene and context for learning the language. I can just go into the next room here. it sets the scene and context whilst introducing the place itself. Now, the place here, I believe, Katya tells us about a ghost. You see the gates at the bottom there, in the middle? Katya tells us a tale about a ghost that is said to appear at these gates. And the male voice asks in Polish, what time does he appear? And Katya says, she explains that he always appears at midnight. And then asks us, she then asks us, do you want to learn how to tell the time in Polish? With subtitles in the language of instruction. If we decide we're interested in learning how to tell the time in Polish, we can then move on to a set of learning objects and exercises. So it's linking the story of the place, it's linking the interesting history and the interesting architecture of the castle. It's linking it directly with a learning object. So it's getting the interest of the user. It's making people more interested in looking around and finding out new things about this place in provincial Europe. Now, we have 5 towns being used on this project, and in each town, 10 places like this. So there are 10 different stories in 10 different learning contexts, leading to 10 different linguistic functions in each place. So that's 50 places like this, each with their own local story, and each leading to a functional learning exercise. As you can see, this still has to be developed. What I can show you now is just the idea and the concept of what this will look like. I, for one thing, is quite impressive and shows a great deal of potential. And what it means is that free and accessible language learning resources meets corporate sustainability and advertising. Let's go back to our... I'm sure there would have been a way to incorporate those. Yeah, we can just start from the current slide.
Current slide is one. And you can stress on one.
Oh, good. Okay, great, thank you. So free and accessible language learning resources meets corporate sustainability and advertising. The resultant situation is that our SMEs in Lithuania, they start to learn about high quality free online language learning materials in their own language, where they can begin to develop communication skills in neighbouring countries. The more the online platform is used, the more the local town councils want to be part of it, and the more interesting and the more diverse the platform becomes. The more it's advertised, the more it's disseminated in the region. So with the correct marketing approach, the platform actually gains its own momentum, and then developers can look at the possibility of advertising revenue, or we can look at the possibility of charging towns to be part of the platform in order to further improve services and enhance user experience. As I said, we're not only redefining the way people learn a language, but we're more redefining the stakeholders, which is the innovative approach. So what next? It would be theoretically possible to expand to other languages. Why not give users customizable accounts, messaging permissions, online profiles, the opportunity to network with other learners of less widely used and taught languages, to communicate directly with other learners offering reciprocal practice. Why not organize cultural tours and language learning holidays directly connected to the towns involved, all under the Everyplace brand? So why not think outside the box? Why not exploit social, economic and media trends to provide momentum to online language learning? The current project is being piloted in various European countries, as I said, and we don't know what will work, we don't know what won't work, we won't know what will need to be changed or added or removed, but we're putting into practice new ideas, and we're challenging the status quo. What is more exciting is that I think this is only one idea of many potential ideas on the rich spectrum of innovation. And so what I'm doing here is really calling to those at the forefront of ICT applications for language learning to do more, to look beyond the traditional comfortable approaches to providing language learning. And I don't mean from a technical perspective or from a delivery or a pedagogical perspective, but from a systems perspective. Language learning can be an integral part of a system, the social, cultural, economic system, with different interrelationships and intrinsic motivations. Innovation in online language can help to redefine the way people learn, but by redefining the stakeholder, it can make it so much more than just an isolated learning platform. So let's do this to overcome access inequality to sustainable language learning. I think with this, we've only really just scratched the surface. So now I'd like to kind of hand over to you and say, you know, what are your ideas? What other stakeholders can we bring into learning language? Every one of you has got a background in ICT, in language learning, in the pedagogical aspects. And all of us here can produce some really, really good quality materials. But who else can we bring in? Which other stakeholders can we bring in to make this accessible and self-disseminating and to perpetuate the process? Over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Well, I'm sure there will be questions or comments because you must have, you know, played with the same ideas, probably in a different context. So now is the time to, yes.
Okay. Hi. Well, I was thinking this is very, very interesting software, and one of the reasons I'm here is because I'm finding new things for my students who are studying English online, and this is very interesting. So I don't know if I can apply it for my students from Mexico that are studying English, or if in the future.
Yeah, the project is running for another year. We've had really the first 12 to 18 months of the project is development. And within the next 2 to 3 months, we should have the platform more or less up and running with these 380 or 360 degree panoramic views of all of the places and the learning objects implemented there. Of course, after the project has finished, we'll be looking at how we can exploit this. And we'll be looking to engage small towns, maybe small towns in Spain, provincial towns in Spain. Places that people have never heard of, but maybe people can come and visit these towns and maybe learn about these towns on the platform and learn Spanish in the process. Absolutely, this is part of our long-term plan, our long-term strategy for this.
Thank you.
No more ideas, no more stakeholders that we can think of. Okay, well, I'll have here a brochure, a flyer of the project. If anyone does have any ideas, or anyone thinks actually I could really incorporate this stakeholder into language learning, then get in touch, because I think that something needs to be done to make this more sustainable and more accessible.
I thought that was a very good idea. If I may, bringing the authorities, the local authorities on board, the city hall, the local council, because otherwise, as we know, the SMEs, they have limited financial possibilities. They certainly want staff, employees who have languages, but they're not exactly willing or eager to pay for, to brush up their language skills or to give them language training. So they expect them to already have those skills before they are hired, and then no need to further spend any money on that. So if you can find a win-win situation like this one, in which if each of the two parties stands to gain something, visibility, then I think, yeah, that's a good thing. Plus, my guess would be that the model is transferable. Yeah, it can be applied to any other LWUTL language, less widely used, less widely taught language. And that's, again, something which is not easy to do, because you can't exactly replicate materials for the big languages, for Spanish, for English, for the others, and make them work. They need localization, they need, a lot of. So, any other questions or comment before we let Tal go?